Hey everybody, it's Barbara. And you're probably wondering right now what's going on since you're seeing a chair and a carpet. No, guys, I have not decided to start reviewing furniture, although my carpet is pretty awesome. What I'm really trying to do is talk about a new doll. And as soon as you see the box, you're going to see why I have to hold off showing you the box, because as soon as you see the box, you will know exactly who this review is about. It is, of course, about She-Ra, the Princess of Power. And if you don't automatically recognize that name, you need to do two things. You need to wait till you're 35 to watch this video, or you need to go to Wikipedia and look up the She-Ra Princess of Power cartoon. Because most of my comments are going to be coming from my memories of watching this cartoon as a kid. The box, and I'm sorry also by the way for the gleam. It's a very shiny box. The box is not matte. It is huge. It is at least, I would say, 15 by 14 by 4. So you know that there's a lot of play potential here in terms of the box itself being a diorama. As I said, of course you have She-Ra. She is doing battle with her main usual adversary, who is Catra. And if I can, just to tilt the box this way, Catra's horse and She-Ra's horse are on the top of the box. And on the back of the box, the battle continues on what would be the left-hand side with She-Ra's besties. The guy up here, that is Bo. He's the kind of sort of love interest, the way that Teela was kind of sort of the love interest of He-Man. More on that in a second. Over here, kind of right next to Bo, is Cowl, who was the mascot, like Orko from the He-Man series. This is Glimmer, Adora's bestie. And then up here, in the purple, who's kind of hard to see, I believe this is Frosta. And here, and if we keep going, and now we go over to the bad guy side, Mantenna, another one of the usual repeating bad guys. Hordak, who is the reason why we have She-Ra, Princess of Power, which I will explain in a second. The evil Shadow Weaver, who is the main, Hordak and Shadow Weaver take turns being in charge of the baddies on Eteria. I want to say this is Imp, the shapeshifter, but I'm not entirely sure. But if I can, I'm just going to go back to the front cover so we can focus on who we should. Our lovely Princess of Power. She-Ra, for those of you who may not realize this, She-Ra is connected to the He-Man series and He-Man Masters of the Universe because She-Ra's real name is Adora, and Adora is the twin sister of Adam, Prince of Eternia, aka He-Man. And years ago, bad guy Hordak, this guy, he kidnapped Adora from Eternia, brought her to Etheria, kind of raised her, tried to have her working for the bad side, and then she, in the pilot episode, comes to realize, I believe Adam somehow winds up on Eteria by mistake, finds his sister, takes her back to Eternia, when she realizes that she's actually a good person and these bad guys have lied to her all along, she decides that she's going to go back to Eteria and fight on the side of the rebellion. Sound familiar, guys? And that's what she does pretty much through the series run, except for one very classic, much lampooned Christmas special where she decides, hey, the war's going pretty well, so let me magically go home, visit my folks for Christmas, which really isn't a holiday on either place, but it becomes a holiday because some Earth children wind up on the planet. I'll stop there. You can do, again, go, after you're done watching this review, go find the He-Man She-Ra Christmas special, or I'll probably talk about this again in a little bit, but for right now, I'm going to debox her, and we're going to talk about her and how this figure, because she is a figure, fits in with other figures, fashion dolls, and whatever else Mattel has got cooking in their little brains of theirs. Inside of that huge box, which I just talked about, is another huge box. This is the She-Ra everybody 35 and older remembers, with her beautiful horse. I want to say his name was Swift Bow, but I think I'm going to get that wrong. Her horse was Swift Wind. When Swift, this is this is Swift Wind. When not in magic form, his name is Spirit. That's sort of like Cringer and He-Man and Battle Cat in He-Man, Cringer with Adam, Battle Cat with He-Man, Swiftwind with She-Ra, Spirit with Adora. On the back of this box is actually something pretty cool. And I gotta say, this is the first time I've ever seen anything like this. The top half is going to give you a little bit of a history of the cartoons and how the action figures were marketed specifically to a female girl audience. And part of that was because it promised glamour, fashion, and adventure, because girls obviously don't want to have an adventure unless it involves glamour and fashion. Barf! Barf! It was the 80s. Feminist theory hadn't quite taken over the world yet. She-Ra kind of came in toward the end of the He-Man fad, and with her addition, I think they kind of killed each other off. But still, she does have iconic status. She's got cult status. And very interestingly, this drawing here, which is of both Adora and She-Ra, I think hints a lot more to this Mattel incarnation of her as a 12-inch figure, as opposed to the 3 3/4 inches she was when she was around in the 80s. The bottom of the box is that really cool thing I was talking about. I have never seen, and certainly to this scale, which is again 5 to 6 inches in height, and 5 to 6 inches in length, and then the width is a good, I would say, 15 inches across. This is a thank you for everyone who made it possible to bring this figure to life, both in the States and in Hong Kong, and I think that's a really cool thing that Mattel did. And I hope if they continue with lines like this for He-Man, for She-Ra, that they continue to put that special thanks there, because I think it makes everybody feel good. Now, the box is going to open, if I'm going to turn it again. You'll see there's a magnetic flap here. There is the doll, obviously posed with a removable diorama of Castle Grayskull. There's also a little booklet in here, which we will take a look at toward the end of the review. Interestingly, Grayskull comes from He-Man. It's on Eternia. But somehow, because of this sword, whenever Adora becomes She-Ra, she has to do it in front of Grayskull. I don't get it. I don't. But, you know, it is what it is. And interestingly, if you notice right here, here's the door to Grayskull. The door seems to be a little small for Adora in the 12 inches. But if you pay close attention to the cartoon versions for He-Man and She-Ra, when they raise up the sword and they're in front of Castle Grayskull, the door behind them is actually much larger than them. So this door would work if you have the vintage figures, so you could put them in front of the vintage figures and have a slightly realistic cartoon proportion to the door. And just very quickly, as you're probably noticing over here, and I can't really move it into frame too much, on your left is again probably something you would have seen in toy stores in the 80s. It's the She-Ra Princess of Power artwork. It's also telling you there's a cool comic book inside, which again I will show us all toward the end of this review. Let's debox her. Let's talk about her and how she works as a costume. This box has a lot of surprises. One of them being that when you finally free She-Ra from the box and you lift everything out, behind Grayskull itself is an interior backdrop of what Grayskull looks like. You didn't see it too often in She-Ra, obviously, because she was on Eteria. But very often in the He-Man cartoons, He-Man would visit the sorceress. He would go down toward the power source in Grayskull, and they would go down a cavernous corridor. This is what that corridor looked like. The lighting, the torches, this is all very much in keeping with the He-Man construction of Grayskull, which they of course used whenever Adora or She-Ra visited home. I wanted to show this to you, and I'm going to be using it from here on out to talk about the figure and her various ensembles, which I will say more about in a second. So let's go ahead and introduce the Princess of Power.
No, my voice hasn't deepened, although, frankly, we do have matching facial hair. This is Barbara's brother, Chuck. You might know me from my YouTube channel, ChuckDog1999. I just wanted to help Barbara out here because, like her, I grew up with He-Man and She-Ra, and just wanted to correct a few things. First of all, the original Masters of the Universe figures. And when I say Masters of the Universe, I want to be clear that that does include the She-Ra Princess of Power line, because Masters of the Universe is the overarching title, were around 4.5 to 5 inches. It really depended on the buck that was used. As sure as you all know, He-Man, Skeletor, Man-at-Arms, they had that bent knee, action-ready look. But there were some figures like Extendar who had straighter legs just because of their gimmick features, and they tended to err towards the taller end of the scale, while She-Ra and the figures released under that banner tended to be a little bit smaller. Also, I just wanted to clear up the bits about the power sword that She-Ra uses. The reason, when Adora would turn into She-Ra, the power sword, like He-Man's, is imbued with the energies and abilities and powers of Grayskull, and thus, when she would turn, to visualize that in the original cartoon, we would of course have Castle Grayskull in the backdrop. Now, unfortunately, the history of the power swords is a bit muddled because it wasn't really covered in the cartoon, and there's a couple different fictional origins, from the mini comics and for what Mattel has done with the Masters of the Universe Classics line. That's a little clear. But to put it bluntly, the power sword is imbued with the powers of Grayskull. That's why Grayskull was there when she would transform, and that's why she would also say, for the honor of Eternia. Okay, I'll just turn this review back over to Barbara. Once again, just if you like Transformers, G.I. Joe, and other Japanese mecha and what have you, feel free to check out my YouTube channel at youtube.com/ChuckDog1999. We have Punch and Pie.
So here we have She-Ra. This is the ensemble that she comes in when she's in the box. There are two others. You will see them in a little bit. This is the outfit that you kind of remember her from the first run of the action figures and from the cartoon, including the choice of sapphire stone in the center of her costume and the red stone at the top of her crown, which you really can't see right now, but I will take it in closer so you can. The traditional costume was the white dress, toga style, with the gold embellishment in the front, the gold belt, the red cape, the Wonder Woman-esque bracelets, and the sword. Let's go ahead and bring her in a little bit closer. And we can talk a little bit more about the costume itself. Typical Mattel, the back of the costume closes with Velcro. It's going to be kind of hard to see between the cape, which I'm not removing right now, and the stand, which is actually a pretty good stand for them. It does close with Velcro. The belt has a button closure. I'm not sure quite what's going on here with the cape. If you notice, there's a ribbon, but I'm not sure if there's also elastic involved in how you would get it off. I think I'm going to find out later, or I'm going to cry. Let's push it back a little bit. Interestingly, they made the effort to do a gemstone-looking stone in the center of her costume. But at the top here, the red dot looks very much like it's plastic, it's painted on. Let me push this back a little bit more. There you go. It looks very plasticky. It doesn't look as gemstone-y as it does here or in the sword, which I'm going to talk about in a second. The crown is also gold plastic. And again, this is keeping with the traditional first crown that we saw. She's got her bracelets. And just to scroll down a little bit, you can see two things. One is the stand, which is unlike the original stand she came with. This says She-Ra, Princess of Power. So it's a very sturdy, thick stand, so she's got some durability there. And she's wearing cloth gold boots, and we'll see how easy they are to remove in a little bit. But if you notice, she's also got two things that are very visible that you don't see in Mattel's Barbie. You might see it a little bit in Monster High, but I'm not overly familiar with those figures. You certainly have not seen it yet in Integrity Toys figures, but you do see it all the time in the Psy Girls, in Hot Toys females, in Dragon or Dragon and Dreams females. And that is the obvious, not only the obvious joints, but the obvious muscles in the joints. There are obvious thigh muscles, obvious calf muscles. If you to push her back again, and to pull this back, there are obvious muscles. It's kind of hard to see with the lighting, but there are obvious muscles in her arms, and the arms are much more jointed than you would ever see in a fashion doll. This is when you can really start to break down what's the difference between an action figure and a doll. Action figures are going to be highly articulated, and she certainly is. To put this down and to swivel up. There is a joint above and below the forearm. The elbow is jointed. The wrist is jointed. And it is also removable, and that's how you can remove the bracelets. The arm has full extension. You can put it in numerous poses quite easily. You saw that I obviously have the sword, and the sword in the right hand is up. I can very easily bring that down and have her pose this way, like she was about to unguard someone. As I recall, and I might be recalling this wrong, and I'm sure in the next pause between setups I will be told if I'm wrong, the swords that we used to get with both He-Man and She-Ra and their colleagues who had swords were not the sturdiest. This is actually a pretty sturdy sword. It's well balanced. It did stay in her hand without falling off or drooping one way or another. I can do this, and it's not going to bend too much. It has a lighter blue stone in it that is still very gemstone-esque, and it is on both sides. It's a very classy sword. And you can certainly use this with any other 12-inch figure. Now, if you notice, this is the sword gripping hand for her. And as I said, this doll comes with a lot of surprises, and to put it mildly, the big surprises are the two outfits. This is what I'm going to call the dress honor guard She-Ra costume. Somebody thought it was Bubble Power She-Ra, but it's not. I'm going to say this is sort of like her dress uniform. Like, you know, the Marines have the very formal formal blues. This is She-Ra's formal attire when she has to go before a king or a queen. Remember, she is a princess. And we also have Adora's outfit, which will come with Adora's boots, which are different than what the boots she wore with She-Ra. And there are, of course, different hands for her to use. So, without any further ado, let me go ahead and put She-Ra into her second formal attire, and then we will bring her to Adora. Before I go ahead and put her into the full costume, that was more in keeping with the 1985 incarnation of She-Ra, I wanted to take a moment and just to show you a little bit more detail. This costume that you're going to see her in a minute is in two parts. And the first part, I guess for modesty's sake, is this one-piece kind of swimsuit-esque look that closes with Velcro in the back. As you can see, it's got a high leg. Because it closes with Velcro, because it's got a high leg, I think you might be able to get away with using this. Don't quote me. You might be able to get away with using this on some of the bigger-bodied Integrity Toys figures, on the Made to Move Barbie, and certainly with Psy Girls, with Hot Toys, with Dragon female figures. I think you might also have a better look now at the musculature in both her arms and her legs. And I also wanted to point out the detailing on her feet. There is an ankle joint here, so for posabilities. And if you'll note, there's also a joint at her feet, so you could actually pose her as if she were in mid-step, if you wanted to do a barefoot look, and just have her one foot sort of up and ready to go. I thought that was an important detail because you usually don't see that kind of detailing, especially with the feet, on most action figures, male or female, let alone a female figure. One other thing to know that I've never actually seen before ever if you note, bring this in close, there is a separation between the big toe and the other four. And I haven't seen that either on many action figures, male or female. So I think in terms of the feet detailing, Mattel went way above the Call of Duty here. Which is, of course, like a general complaint a lot of people have about Mattel is, why do they do so well on a figure like in one spot? And if they just paid enough attention, you would have a great figure. Well, that's a complaint that we'll save perhaps for the end of the video. But let's keep going. Let's continue to dress Adora and see what she looks like in her formal She-Ra attire. So here is She-Ra in the 1985 version of her costume with one additional bonus. This is a version where her crown, or her helmet, or however you want to call it, has a double feature. If you can see here, this is a mask covering her eyes. It's supposed to disguise her. Sort of, kind of like how the glasses managed to disguise Kara Danvers and Clark Kent. I don't know. But you can also do this. Gently take it off. Flip it around, which is how I'm going to leave it for the rest of this. And she's got a much more hooded look to the costume now. If you notice, just going down very quickly, the red gemstone that was in her original crown is now in the bracelets. And again, for some reason, instead of going with a red gemstone, they've painted red on the plastic. Which again is kind of ridiculous because they went ahead and put a gemstone in this costume. It's a clear diamond this time, but still, it's a gemstone. If you're going to put the gemstone in the costume, why not put it on the bracelets? Let's just leave one of them up now so you can see what I'm talking about, and a little bit of the gemstone too. This particular version also comes with a non-matching silver-toned shield that has the blue gemstone that is the essence of Grayskull. And I think the idea is you should be able to slip her hand through it. And there's probably a hand that will better grip this. But that's the shield. You can see it this way. That's how her hand is going to go through. There's a grip here too. If you had her with the sword hand, I think you could probably put it through. A little easier than what I'm doing right now. Or she could carry it like that. So it can hold two poses. Put her forward again. And again we have, this time, again in keeping with the 1985 version, a gold tone sword with the blue gemstone and a wrapped white, oh god, what, a scabbard. I had to think for a second what that word was. I don't have the sword. I wanted to show you, by the way, the flat hands, right and left, so I don't have the sword grabbing hand in. But just for the sake of argument, here we go. That would be the whole look. And you could switch out, as I guess I'll do right now. They do come out easily. Of course, for the camera, it's not going to do it. Please grip your sword. There we go. Here we go. It's tricky to get in, but I'd rather it be tricky to get in than easily come out. But again, here's the look. And that is the 1985 version of her, complete with the triple layered cape, which you can see, I'll show you in the back. The secondary cape has a little bit of a ruffled, has a little bit of a ruffled detail in the back. And of course, again, the sword, the shield, which I'll just hold here. And that is look number 2. Let's go ahead and take a look at her as Adora, leader of the rebellion. And here is Adora. And very quickly, just to remind everybody, the very beginning of the story, Adora, having been kidnapped from Eternia, raised on Etheria by Hordak, was originally sort of like a prison guard, a unit chief for the bad guys, and then she comes around to being a good guy. So she's got training as a fighter, which is why I decided in this version I would show you that she comes with a third set of hands in fist form. She's also wearing a bodysuit with gold detailing, and underneath that a white turtleneck. I don't think Adora in Adora form had a cape with her at all times, but to get this cape off, I would have had to pop the head off, which I was not about to do. You can also note that she's now got red wrist guards made of plastic, not detailed. She's wearing red boots that match her ensemble. And also, interestingly enough, I'm going to pull the cape to the front. And if you note, obviously, besides the stand, the bodysuit has in the back loops that you put the sword through. So it's kind of got that Highlander thing to it where you go behind you and pull the sword out. Unfortunately, the costume is such that it doesn't completely hide the sword. The sword does not go down far enough that you can hide it. But it is there, and it is easy enough to simply guide the sword through the loops and keep it there, which is a cool detail. Again, as with the other costumes, this closes with Velcro. The black belt, which is a nice detail, also closes with. The belt also, by the way, closed with Velcro. Let's take a look, if we can, very quickly, at the other element which I talked about at the very beginning, which is the comic book that comes with the set. I'm going to turn off one of the lights. Again, it is not matte. It is a glossy cover. She-Ra, Princess of Power, the story of She-Ra. And it is a pretty quick retelling of how She-Ra found her brother and how they came together and how she became the Princess of Power. It's a cute little book. It's certainly a really nice addition to have with the series, with the doll. I don't know, frankly, if we're going to get a series out of this. I am told by people who would know such things that because this particular 12-inch version of She-Ra did not sell well, there will not be other 12-inch versions of the Princess of Power series, which is a shame because it would have been nice to see a couple of the other figures and their ensembles. But the good news is there is some playability to her. And for our last segment, I'm going to show you exactly what I mean by that. So folks, I did say that this is a 12-inch figure of She-Ra, and I did mention many times that there are other action figures and 12-inch fashion dolls out there, and could you keep the dolls going? Could you play with them? Well, I decided to see what would happen if I dressed two other dolls in She-Ra's attire. So, of course, in the front we have She-Ra with the gold sword, which I prefer, in the first outfit that she comes dressed in when you open the box. Over here, we have Veronique, repainted by John Copeland in a wig that I thought was a little bit more in keeping with Adora's hair when Adora was walking around in her civilian attire. I could be dreaming this, but I think there was actually a couple of shades difference between Adora's blonde and She-Ra's blonde. Again, I could be crazy. But as you can see, Adora's ensemble fits this fashion royalty figure very nicely. Of course, the boots are loose on her, but they would work, and they're a nice pair of boots for her to have. It's a nice Halloween costume for her. And then over here, sort of not cooperating, is another Integrity Toys lady who wants to remain anonymous, which is why she's wearing the mask. She's gonna kill me, Roland. She is wearing the formal She-Ra costume with the gold wristbands, which I'm able to put on because this is a slightly later model Integrity Toys that do have the removable hands, though they never come with fists. And again, the dress fits her very well. You don't have to put the white bodice underneath it. Just the dress fits her very well. I doubled up, you might notice I doubled up the collar here to give it a little more ruffle. Nice touch. She's still gonna kill me for dressing her like this, but you know, that's what dolls do. They kill you in the night. And you can see the boots work pretty nicely as well. Of course, you can see off in the distance the what they changed out of. Oh well, peek behind the curtain. And there they are. You can see, by the way, the Integrity figures are taller. It looks like this one is much taller, but that's an illusion of two things: her hair and the crown. They're actually a lot closer in height. And I wouldn't generally recommend putting her in Integrity Toys, in an Integrity Toys ensemble. I don't think you can go the other way. She-Ra's a little bit too muscular for most of their attire, so I'm not sure she could wear Integrity Toys or Mattel, or other Mattel for that matter, but maybe with the Made to Move or the Curvy Barbies, she could. We'll have to save that for another review. Speaking of reviews, this is my first one of the new year, so happy 2017, everybody. I hope you've all recovered from Mariah Carey's performance. It was traumatic for all of us, or at least most of us, not me. But I wanted to start off 2017 with a bunch of thank yous. And the first one goes to my brother Charlie, who not only jumped in here and saved me during part of this review, but he's the reason why I started doing toy reviews. He has so much fun doing it, I figured, let me do the same. I also want to thank Pat, Ian, and Frank. Pat, the NES punk. Ian and Frank, his partners. Ball Matrix, Optibartimus, and Shartimus Prime. They are all toy reviewers that I've come to know from watching their reviews and the visualizations of their podcasts. I think they are really great people. They do amazing toy reviews. They also have a lot to say, very interesting things to say, I'll quickly add, about pop culture. So if you can find them, I will put the links to them in in my description box below. And of course, I will give another shout out to my brother in the description box below. But to all of them, I say thank you for being an inspiration. To all of you, I say thank you for watching my videos and for liking my page on Facebook. And I look forward to doing some really cool reviews in 2017 and seeing where things go with Mattel, with Integrity Toys, with Dragon, with Girl, with Hot Toys. Will they step in now and fill in what is going to be a very huge gap since Tanner has decided to take his toy business in a very different direction? What will 2017 hold? Frankly, will we all still be here after the American presidential inauguration on the 20th of January? Who knows? But we'll certainly find out together, won't we? So, for my Veronique, for Shira, and for she who wishes to remain anonymous but is actually Agnes von Weiss, happy collecting, happy playing, and I will see you guys really soon.